Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Tuesday, August 20th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 361 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. Today we are recapping all the action from day 17 of New York Jets training camp. Tomorrow afternoon, I will be out at One Jets Drive to watch the Jets-Giants joint practice. So I will have my in-person takeaways tomorrow afternoon, fired up to get out to One Jets Drive one final time this summer before the Jets finish things up at the end of this week in camp. And then, of course, the real thing starts here in just 20 days from now. Today, we'll break down all of our takeaways from day number 17. Some guys, some key veterans, some key pieces did not practice. Kind of a light day, so not a ton to take away, but definitely a lot to still discuss here on the pod, including some comments from Aaron Rodgers after practice. We got some clips to play for you today. Now, before we begin, I am super excited to announce a brand new podcast partner, BetUS. Football season is here. The Jets, like I said, open up in 20 days from now. Of course, there will be games on even prior to that. Preseason games, of course, are still happening this weekend. But use my link in the description down below or in the pinned comment. And if you use my link, you will get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first three deposits up to $2,000. Plus, the New York Jets, according to BetUS, have just bumped up to first place in the division with plus 170 odds. So put $100 down to win 170. They're still at plus money. So while you can, you want to bet the New York Jets. Again, use my link to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first three deposits up to $2,000. Really fired up to team up with BetUS this football season. And again, link can be found in the description or the pinned comment in this video on YouTube. So definitely check that out and get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first three deposits up to $2,000. Also, of course, my friends over at SeatGeek, use promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. And of course, my friends over at Huga House, promo code BUBS for 15% off. All right, now let's get into today's podcast. As the New York Jets just wrapped up day 17 of camp about, I would say, an hour ago now. It was a light practice, just helmets and shorts, so no pads today as they await the New York Giants tomorrow afternoon. Another 1 o'clock start for the Jets tomorrow against the Giants in what is their final of 3 joint practices this summer before they play the Giants in a final of 3 preseason games out of MetLife Stadium on Saturday night. A couple key players were not out there this afternoon, mainly because of rest reasons, it seems. Aaron Rodgers did not practice, rest. CJ Mosley didn't practice, rest. And Breece Hall also didn't practice. So 3 key New York Jets, 2, of course, coming on offense. And, of course, CJ Mosley, the leader of that defense, all didn't practice before the joint practice tomorrow. And, of course, it was another kind of light practice, just helmets, just shorts prior to what should be a physical practice against the Giants. Now, there were still some positives to take away. I thought a lot of the depth pieces today really stepped up with some of these starters absent, with some of these starters not out there. And we'll start with the quarterback. I thought Tyrod had a pretty solid day today. He was able to get Jeremy Ruckert involved a ton. Ruckert had, at least from what everybody was saying, from the reports I've seen, Ruckert had 3 receptions this afternoon from Tyrod and even maybe a couple more. But he started the series, started practice with a big gain from Tyrod. He then also had a first down reception from Tyrod and was also able to get a reception on a short completion from Tyrod. So overall, a very strong day for Ruckert. And Tyrod was spreading the ball around, was getting the ball to Ruckert, was getting the ball to Lance McCutcheon, got Corley involved, got Izzy involved, got Brownlee involved. So got about 5 different guys involved, which I think is really positive, especially as we wind down camp here, seeing some of these final position battles, specifically at receiver, start to take shape, start to finish up as we near the final couple days here before roster cutdowns go from 90 to 53. Next week, McCutcheon, it was a quick pass to Lance McCutcheon. Corley had his reception over the middle. Izzy's was a short pass. Brownlee was also over the middle. Corley's been nice. It's been good to see Malachi Corley continue to get better, continue to improve here during camp with more reps, more opportunities. And I think his route running's got a lot better. I'm looking forward to seeing him, tomorrow in person just to see that improvement. Route running's been better. I think his overall pass catching's been better. I think he's just gotten a lot more well-rounded since starting camp, where he kind of got off to a little bit of a slow start. But then once the Gibson injury occurred and he was out for about a week or so, Corley got some first-team reps, started to really pick it up. There was a couple practices where he really shined, and today was another of those days where he made a couple nice plays coming from Tyrod. Martinez also was able to get Izzy involved, was able to get Irv Charles involved. So a lot of those depth receivers, which we'll get into here a little bit in a second, we're producing today. As for the running backs, Izzy had a couple nice runs. Solid day for him. One of his better practices, maybe recently. He's, to be all fairness though to Izzy, he's actually put together some nice practices recently. It'll be interesting. Again, really next week we'll find out all of these competitions, all of these cuts, who's a surprise cut, who gets cut, who doesn't, all that stuff. Your Brees, Allen, Davis is your 1, 2, 3 punch. Will they hold a fourth? It'll be interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if they hold a fourth. I also wouldn't be surprised if they move on from Izzy, try and stash him on the practice squad. If not, he's maybe done enough to go elsewhere. I don't know if Izzy's done enough from a Jets perspective to remain with the Jets. It feels like it might be a little too late, because this is a guy that really to start camp was not producing much at all, if we're being honest. Was kind of a non-factor. And I really thought from the days I was there that Tariq Cohen actually looked a lot better than Izzy. And Tariq Cohen, it felt like, was getting a lot more reps than Izzy. It felt like Izzy at times was strictly getting third-team reps, not even really seeing second-team reps. So now that he's starting to play a little bit more, I thought he looked good against Carolina. He had the touchdown against Washington. It still feels like it might be too late, but he's probably put a good enough body of work together, at least in these last week or two, especially in the games, that if he does get cut, maybe he gets picked up elsewhere. So kind of an interesting camp for him, and definitely an interesting storyline to follow as to whether or not he remains a Jet, gets on the practice squad, whatever his future is. But you got to give him credit. He's put together some good days after what kind of felt like might be a lost summer for him early on in camp. Braylon Allen also had a couple really nice runs today. Again, it's tough to gauge the running backs when they're, even with pads on, it's always tough to gauge the running backs in training camp practices because you don't know. They tend to call the play dead, right? Kind of when they don't, they just kind of just wrap up and they call the play dead. So it's tough, especially a player of Braylon Allen's caliber who tends to break tackles, tends to run over people, tends to have that ability to, even if a guy wraps up, can still pick up 3-4 yards after contact. So that downhill running style, that physical running style, it's sometimes tough to tell, but there are still runs where he shows off his burst. There are still those plays where even in practice, you could just see the potential. You could just see so much of why we're all excited. I mean, I just think in the first 2 preseason games with Braylon Allen, we saw why he'll be such a great piece alongside Brees Hall. You look at the Washington game, he showed off more of his speed. He showed off more of his ability to get to the outside, get to the second level, show off his burst a little bit. He also showed his physicality where he trucked through Washington's defender. I don't know exactly who it was, but basically ran through a Commander's defender to get a first down. You saw that side of Braylon Allen. And then against Carolina, you saw the side of Braylon Allen where he was a lot more short yardage, 3-4 yards, just downhill, 3rd and 3, 2nd and 3, picking up those short yardage situations. You see both sides of them, and that ability to do a little bit of both. Talked about the wide receivers today. All the depth guys I thought all stepped up. Brownlee, McCutcheon, Irv Charles. Who will they keep? Brandon Smith's another name to look out for as a guy that's done some good things in the preseason games. It's kind of a battle to the finish here. You know who your 5 guys are receiving wise. Who's going to be that 6th? Are they going to hold on to 6th? Are they going to hold on to 7? Does Irv Charles find a role as just a special teamer? Brownlee, I would say, is the most skilled out of all of them. But what do the Jets value? Do they maybe value how does the rest of the roster shape out? Where does Irv Charles get on? What's the drop off between like a Brownlee, Irv Charles with his special teams ability, whatever it is. So it's interesting. And Lance McCutcheon's a guy that Rodgers talked about as a guy that he's been impressed with. So do they value kind of what Rodgers said? And maybe McCutcheon has a better chance than maybe some things. So really, really interesting to see how the rest of this receiving core pans out. And I think a lot of people, including myself, would still like to see the Jets potentially look at another veteran, depending on who gets cut, who's out there once cut down day happens. So even if Brownlee makes the team, even if one of those guys make the team, which of course will happen, are they going to actually roll with that guy? Are they going to maybe go get a veteran, somebody else? So it'll be interesting to see how the sixth receiver spot essentially plays out here for the Jets over the next couple weeks. Jeremy Ruckert talked about it. Good day for him. Good camp for Ruckert overall. Very good camp. Very, very strong camp. Finishing strong. Missed 3 of the last week or so with a concussion. Was back yesterday in the red non-contact jersey. Was back today fully contact, all that stuff, fully participating in team drills. So good afternoon for him. Very strong camp for Ruckert. I think you've got to be a lot more confident in Jeremy Ruckert going into the season than you were going into camp, because I'll be honest, going into camp, I wanted to see a lot out of Ruckert. I was not skeptical, not that I didn't believe in Ruckert, but I was still kind of 50-50 on what he could actually be. And I think so far in camp, and of course it's got to actually translate to the games, but I think he's put together by far his best camp of his career. I think that's pretty obvious. And hopefully it translates to the field as a legitimate number 2 option behind Tyler Conklin. Olu Fashanu had a couple good reps today, still working at right tackle. So we'll see if he gets out there maybe again, depending on what the Jets do on Saturday. We'll see if Olu gets out there again at right tackle as they continue to work him in as their legitimate 6th option at offensive line, where if a Morgan Moses or a Tyron Smith go down, Olu is legitimately the next guy up. That's mainly the offense stuff. As for the defense, Takk McKinley and Eric Watts had a couple pressures today. I think McKinley's making this roster. I really believe McKinley is making this roster. I've actually gone to the point now where I'd be a little bit surprised if Takk McKinley does not make this team. And I've said it a couple times. I wouldn't be surprised if Clemens maybe is a surprise cut. I do feel like the Hassan Reddick situation has impacted that. If Hassan Reddick was healthy, I would definitely say Clemens is getting cut, but not Reddick not being healthy. I mean, if Reddick was here, rather, not hurt. If he was here, if he just showed up, if he was practicing, if this was a normal situation between a trade, between a edge rusher and a team, then I would say Clemens 100% to being cut. I don't know if the Jets do cut Clemens, and let's say Reddick doesn't play, then you'd be asking basically McKinley and somebody else essentially to step up as your 3rd and 4th edge rusher in a way, with McDonald and Jermaine leading the way. So I don't know how that all pan out, but McKinley, I think, makes this roster. And I could see him taking away reps during the season from Clemens, who has really not looked very good at all, even when he's gotten first-team opportunities. Even in the preseason games, he's kind of getting pushed around. So very interesting to see how that'll play out here over the next week or so as well. And that's pretty much it. Again, a light practice, not a ton of highlights, not a ton to take away. A lot more depth guys, I thought, performing well, which is good this time of year because you want to see the depth guys performing well as roster cut down looms. We already know what we're getting out of starters. Let's see what we get out of some of these depth guys. All right, so a couple notes I want to discuss on Aaron Rodgers about some things I thought he said today that were interesting. Number one, on the joint practice tomorrow, also him not committing to the preseason game. And another one was on reps. And I'll actually have to give Robert Saleh some credit here on how he's handled camp this year and how Rodgers and the rest of the team has viewed that change that Robert Saleh made in terms of reps, especially for the starters and the workload so far in camp. So here's the first clip. It's about a minute and change on the game on Saturday, Rodgers' thoughts preseason, thoughts on the joint practice tomorrow, and all that stuff here. Here's Rodgers.
Yeah, it's like our preseason game. Whether or not, we play Saturday, who knows? If Saleh wants us to, then we will. I don't know what he told you guys, but we haven't been told anything yet. Yeah, okay. So we're on the same page. We're good, yeah. But it'll be good. Most of these practices have been pretty one-heavy. We took a ton of the reps against Washington and then against Carolina. So I would assume it's going to be a lot of reps, probably situational stuff. There'll probably be a third down period. It'll probably be some sort of red zone period, some sort of 2-minute period. So those are good opportunities. A different defense than we saw last year in our brief 2 series. Wink told us pregame he was going to play much cover 3 and then went 0 on half the snaps, including the first play. There's more of a familiarity with their coordinator and Todd Downing and I think Keith being on the staff together. So maybe we won't get that tomorrow, but they got 2 great, premier pass rushers. They got really good interior guys. They're young in some spots, but it'll be fun. I'm excited to see Malik. See what he's all about. Be a good opportunity for him going against some, our premier corners. And
so that was Rodgers commenting on not still knowing whether or not he'll play in the preseason. Continues to say it's up to Saleh, but I think we all know if Rodgers says he wants to play, he'll play. If Rodgers says I don't want to play, he probably won't play. So still feels like Rodgers probably has the final word there. Looking forward to joint practice tomorrow. Feels like you kind of getting an opportunity to see what, of course, the Jets, look like, match up, some more good reps. Rodgers has talked about, as even in that clip, not really your full offense, but it's still a good opportunity to go up against another team, a different color uniform. Now, this I thought was really interesting and something that I think is even more important. The way that Robert Saleh has changed camp this week in terms of, or this year, I should say, this summer, in terms of reps, workload, and all that good stuff from past years, even Rodgers' training camp last year.
But I give Robert a lot of credit because he, from the start of the offseason, said this is going to be a tough training camp. And I think it's been a lot of reps for the ones. He told me the other day we were somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 more reps, I think, at this point in camp than last year. And it feels like it, but it's good. I think it's going to allow us to maybe be a little more ready. And we've been fortunate with injuries. We haven't had a ton of injuries so far. So I like it. It's been great. You talk to the older guys, not a lot of complaints from any of those guys. The young guys don't know any better, so it's been good.
That's something I'm really glad to see. And even just from a fan's perspective, look, obviously I'm not out there practicing, but in past years, I've gone to training camps in each of Saleh's 3 seasons as a coach. And in past years, whether it was his first season, second season, this season, there was definitely a clear difference in this year's intensity from what I've seen. In past years, I've said it a couple times on this podcast, I think. In past years, it feels like there's some practices where I would walk away from the practice. I would leave one Jets drive, get on the bus to go back to the parking lot, and I would kind of ask myself, what exactly did the Jets do today? Like, what exactly did they get done? I would tend to find myself walking away with not many takeaways, not many real thoughts or feelings on what happened. This year, I felt much, much different. I feel like a lot of the practices have been a lot more intense. They've been a lot more business-oriented, which I've talked about a lot. A lot of Jets fans have discussed where false starts, they're getting, players are getting taken off the field. Now, we haven't quite seen that translate to preseason games with penalties where players are taking off, especially with dumb penalties. Kind of example, cough, cough, Chaz Surratt's penalty against the Panthers. He should have been taken out of the game after that for a play to understand his mistake, to hold players accountable, but we'll see how that translates. But there's definitely been a much more business-like feel. A lot more reps, not much. I don't want to say, last year too with the cameras and the hard knocks, it felt a little bit more just not a ton of focus, a lot more, I don't know, trying to be flashy, that type of stuff, not really focused on practice, getting better, all that jazz. But I think that's a positive. I mean, look, Rodgers said, Saleh told him about 300 plus reps already. And that's a great thing, especially for a quarterback that, of course, is coming off a torn Achilles, who, of course, you want to see continue to build up more chemistry with Garrett Wilson and all these other guys. But I think that's a positive, something I noticed. And two, you look at, Rodgers mentioned in that clip about starting the season faster. And you look at Saleh's years as a head coach. The Jets have never, It's kind of interesting with the Jets, how their seasons have gone with Saleh, because they've kind of been broken into three parts. The Jets don't always start very well. Then the middle of the season with Saleh, they play well, and then they collapse at the end. Now you go back to 2021, right? Saleh's first year. They started 0-3. They were 1-4 at the bye week. You go to 2022. A little bit different. The Jets started 1-2. Then they, of course, went on that 4-game win streak, got to 5-2, all that stuff. Then they collapsed after the bye week. Last year was a little bit similar to 2021. They started 1-3. Then they won 3 straight, got to 4-3. Then they collapsed. So under Saleh, they've been start slow, play better, collapse. Start slow, play better, collapse. Last year, same thing. Started 1-3, won 3 straight, got to 4-3. Then they collapsed, and they finished 7-10. So the point I'm trying to make here in terms of starting fast, the Jets under Saleh have never really started fast. Even last year, after the preseason win against the Bills, and I get they went from Rodgers to Zach Wilson, but they were 1-0, and then they lost 3 straight games. And they were blowout against Dallas, ugly loss against New England, almost beat Kansas City, but still lost 3 straight games, were 1-3. Under Saleh, the Jets have never really started seasons very, very strong. It's not until week 4, week 5, week 6 where the Jets start to pick it up. So you hope that this year and again, I don't know if that's a direct correlation with camp, but it is something that's been interesting during the Saleh tenure. The Jets don't tend to, first year they started at 1-4 at the bye. The next season they were 1-2, then they, picked things up, then they collapsed. 2022 was kind of an outlier. Last year they started 1-3. So the Jets have never really started strong. This year could be a little bit different. I don't know if it's going to be a direct correlation with camp, but more reps, more physicality, more energy in practice, more productive practices. Like I said, there's times where I would walk out of there kind of wondering what the heck the Jets actually did. There would be like no contact, no actual drills. Like it would just be a bunch of standing around, it would feel like. Of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit. They would actually do stuff, but from a fan's perspective, from an energy perspective, it felt like they would not do a ton, especially the starters. It's like, where's the real work coming from? So you hope that this year could translate a little bit where, hey, you got the Niners right away on the road, tough defense, team that went to the Super Bowl. You got to be ready right out of the gate. And maybe Saleh realizes that. You can't get punched in the mouth. You can't get knocked around in week 1. You can't get punched in the mouth and knocked around in the first couple weeks. You can't start 1-3. You can't start 2-4. You've got to be, 3-1, 4-1 with this team on paper. There's no reason this team should not be at least 4-1 going into, or really, in my eyes, I think they should be at least 5-1 going into that Bills game. I don't see why they shouldn't be. We've talked about it so many times. Tennessee beatable. New England's a disaster. Denver's the disaster. Minnesota, Sam Darnold, they shouldn't scare you. Then it's Buffalo. Then it's Pittsburgh. Then, all right, Houston, shortly thereafter. Indy. Then you get into a couple tough matches, but you should be 5-1. Got to come out of the gate hot. There's no excuse. And I think Saleh realizes that too. Like, hey, if I don't come out the gate hot, my seat only gets hotter. Who knows what would happen after that? So I like the change. It's a change that I think a lot of people have noticed, and Rodgers commenting on it, that kind of confirms what we already felt like we're speculating / knew. Again, BetUS. Link in the description, or for those of you on YouTube, link can also be found in my pinned comment on the video. Use my link to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Like I showed you here, AFC East, the Jets have now jumped in as the favorites, plus 170, still at plus odds. They have jumped the Bills. So bet 100, win 170. There will be plenty of other over-unders, win totals, spreads that I will be posting here on YouTube, Twitter, for you to bet on. And again, my link, use my link, 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. So make sure to check out BetUS and get yourself on some of these New York Jets spreads, odds, all that good stuff. Should be a very, very, very exciting year with a whole lot of success. That's the hope. So that'll do it with an episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I will be back tomorrow with my in-person takeaways from New York Jets and New York Giants joint practice. So stay tuned for that. Looking forward to getting out there tomorrow afternoon. And until then, as always, hope you enjoyed it. I will have a player preview up tomorrow morning, so stay tuned for that. So 2 episodes tomorrow. And until then, JETS, 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 Jets.